Tamaria, welcome back to Q&A. While the world is focused on fighting COVID-19, around 100 companies, mainly private, are scrambling to put large numbers of satellites in space. Mega satellite constellations such as Elon Musk's Starlink cluster help to develop internet connectivity on Earth. But astronomers warn that more clusters will mean blanketing the Earth in satellites, obstructing research and changing the look of our night sky for everyone. So is that the price we have to pay for progress? Reporter Whina Owen explains how New Zealand could play a key role in managing the latest space race.
We can all look up and see the night sky. And to have that be changed by industrial activity without any conversation, that seems a tragedy.
Early last year, Elon Musk's long fleets of Starlink satellites appeared in the skies. His company plans to put 42,000 satellites up, and now the race is on.
This is something that's becoming a global issue where multiple companies around the world are engaging in the creation of low Earth orbit constellations, or mega constellations as they're known. So that pollution is going to start to become more and more noticeable as tens of thousands of these launch.
As this simulation shows, thousands of low-orbit satellites will be visible to the naked eye, but the trails they leave put astronomy's task of answering the big questions under threat. Outdated space treaties mean the companies have been able to race to orbit with very little regulation. Cosmologist Dr. Richard Easter.
So I think there is a deliberate attempt to kind of stake a claim rather than to wait and see what happens. So if you get there first, then other people are going to have to work around you.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff.
On Friday, Starlink launched its latest batch of 60 satellites. Elon Musk has been willing to work with astronomers to reduce the brightness of their satellites, although it's not clear how much that's been achieved.
This is an engineering problem. It can have an engineering solution.
There's a New Zealand connection to the Starlink trains we see overhead. One of its ground stations is just outside Invercargill. And our most successful space business, Rocket Lab, has just announced it's getting into the mega constellation business with its Neutron rocket and plans to launch satellite clusters in a few years from the US. A tracking station on the Chatham Islands will be part of the infrastructure. So we've come to Rocket Lab in Auckland to ask CEO Peter Beck about those plans. What can't we film, Peter?
Well, you can film the majority of the launch vehicle, but there are some pieces of intellectual property that we prefer we don't show to them.
So you were aware there's a lot of discussion about low Earth orbit being kind of a wild frontier, the wild west,
we're part of that discussion. No, we're part of that discussion. In fact, I went to the UN in Geneva to talk about this. We've been very very open with our view that there needs to be regulation in this area.
But maybe that's not going to be good for your plans around Neutron if it's over-regulated.
Not at all. I mean, because ultimately it's all about doing it sustainably. And there's no doubt that we need these services in space down on Earth. I mean, we all use space infrastructure every day. We all expect to get on our phone and pull up Google and be able to get directed to where we want to go, or call up Uber Eats and the guy arrives at your house. Everyone expects these kinds of things. So there's no doubt that we have to build infrastructure in space.
We're asking those that have moved to high ground or inland to remain where you are.
Peter Beck offers the example. It was a satellite that warned us last week of a possible tsunami.
So what trade do you want to make? So do we no more satellites, so you don't have any of that warning system anymore?
We should never be in this kind of false dichotomy where we're saying you can have something, but we're going to take something away from you.
Michelle Bannister is herself a star of the astronomy world with an asteroid named after her. She's hopeful astronomers and the space industry can work together. So is Peter Beck, who points out most of the constellations Rocket Lab will launch will not be at low orbit. The companies also develop technology which means their rockets do not shed debris.
We seem to be nearing the threshold for the feared Kessler syndrome.
As the number of satellites and debris increases, so does the chance of chain reaction collisions.
The question is, how bad are we going to let that get? And without a degree of international global cooperation around it, it is going to be a problem.
New Zealand's space economy is now worth $1.6 billion. We now have a space agency. In a statement, its director told Q&A, "We agree that mega constellations and the growing number of space objects are an issue which requires global coordination to solve. New Zealand can only regulate objects launched from our territory." Like Dr. Bannister, Emeritus Professor John Hernshaw has been part of an international team trying to update a UN space treaty on satellites.
We are asking all member states of the UN to look at the report and say whether they support it. We hope New Zealand will do that.
Pressure for more action is mounting here, with dark sky tourism growing fast and more focus on the cosmos with the formalising of Matariki.
The New Zealand government certainly has obligations, to Māori and to preserve the things that Māori in particular value. We've very unexpectedly, for a small nation, become a country that has to regulate space launch, and there's only a dozen countries in the world that can do that. And so we have a particular role to play here, and I think people do talk about this as an issue of kaitiakitanga, our ability to act as a guardian of the natural world.
The night sky, this is a taonga. This is a treasure that we have that is something that is the common heritage of everyone.
As a whole species, really, we need to have a much bigger discussion about how we utilise space in a way that benefits everybody.
Meanwhile, those in remote areas of the world are getting connected to the rest of us as Starlink rolls out its internet. And Peter Beck tells us he'd love to bring the constellation-launching rocket Neutron to New Zealand and eventually put people on it. Watch this space.
That was reporter Fina Owen. Now, before we leave you this